Moshi friendos, I wanted to drop a really quick tutorial on how you can do a pretty easy anime style head without the need for intense anatomy study. This is perfect for people who might have limited mobility in their hands because we're going to be relying on the Procreate tools. We're not using any tools that you wouldn't find on a standard drawing software, and this is also ideal for children or absolute beginners. And if you want to use the base that I'm referencing, it's a head that I drew, it's a base that I have, it's available for free on the paid tier of my Patreon, and there is a version of it for free Patreon members, so you can check that out too.
Studio.
So the basic functions that we're going to be using are Canvas Assist Symmetry tool. We're going to be using my modded technical pen, so that's any lining pen on your chosen software. I'm using Procreate. It's called Technical Pen. It's any lining pen which has a taper which responds to the pressure of your line. And you're going to set the jitter to 0, and you're going to set your stability to 100. And so if you have shaky hands, or you're a kid, or you're an absolute beginner, you don't have to worry too much about the stability of your own hand because the pen is going to help us do that. And so you need to find the symmetry tool, and you can set the line of symmetry wherever you want in the canvas. If you have some kind of a reference image, I'm going to use the head from Patreon in my case, then you can just move the symmetry line over so that you have a bit more space to draw, and then set up your canvas so you have your reference picture if you're using one wherever you want to use it. And so we're going to use the symmetry tool so that we don't have to be too stressed out about anatomy. It's essentially going to do the hard work of making things symmetrical for us. Another thing that you should know how to do is get familiar with changing the opacity of your layers, because we're going to make a sketch layer and we're going to turn the opacity down to a degree that is comfortable for you. And play around with the different sketching pens available on your chosen program. I like to sketch in really thick lines, and so if you're using Procreate, you want to just pick the sketching pencil, and you can leave it to about 6%. Try to choose a sketching pencil which does not rely on the pressure of your hand for tapering, because sometimes it's hard, I find anyway, to see the underpainting if the lines are too thin or if there seems to be blowouts. And I like to color code my sketches. You don't have to if it doesn't confuse you to line on top of a black sketch, but using primary colors if you're an absolute beginner would help. So I like to use reds, blues, yellows or oranges, and then sometimes I'll use like a green or a purple. So anything that is like extremely visible, especially if you have any kind of like sight problems, the symmetry tool and the colored underpainting will help you a lot. So let's get our symmetry tool turned on, and then we're going to pick our sketching pencil of choice. I like to do red, basically for the skeleton and the general lines of motion, and we'll do a rudimentary circle. You can also press and hold an oval or a circle, and Procreate will auto-make one for you. We're going to choose the midline of the face. In this case, we're going to do it over the symmetry tool divider, and then you just need a line for the eyes, and this is on the bottommost quarter of the circle. And then we want a line for the nose and the chin. And even if it's not perfect, it's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a fake pass where we make the very basic shape for a jaw and a chin to see if there's anything glaringly wrong. And so you can adjust from here, and once we're happy with where everything is laying, at the bottom of your rudimentary circle, you're going to make yourself a line to deviate the jaw, and then we're just going to make sure again, like I've done there, that the jaw is looking good. And now we can make the bottommost part of the face, and we're gonna line the top so that we have a nice little skull. And remember that your skin is not shrink wrapped to your bones, so you do want to leave a little bit of a berth there. You don't have to worry too much about things like muscle or fascia or fat. in a face, you just want to make sure that you're not shrink wrapping the skin. So cheeks are going to have a little bit of give even on a thin person, right? Where your nose is, and you can move the nose if you notice that your proportions are off, the bottom half of your face, the midway point between the chin and the nose, we're going to put the mouth. The bottom line at the base of your circle is going to be the bottommost part of the eyes, and then our original line where we had scouted the eye line is going to be the topmost part of the eyes. And here's a fun tip just for making your lines look cleaner. You can taper off the end. You're basically making, I like to call it a little Q-tip shape, and I find that it just cleans up the sketch and it looks better. It's an aesthetic thing, but it helps me keep track. For the eyes, I do a very rudimentary shape because we can stylize them later. So for the purpose of the example, let's just do a very basic shape. And now assess your face to see if everything is looking proportional, looking symmetrical. And you can use your lasso tool to cut sections out and move them around. If you're uncomfortable with moving sections around piecemeal, you can turn your symmetry layer back on. And so we'll have the symmetry layer to help us move things around. And so I'm noticing in my base that I made for Patreon, the pupils are a little bit bigger, the nose is a little bit higher. So I'm going to make some changes ahead of doing eyelids and then eyebrows. And my symmetry layer is back on to help me here. So now we're going to find the hairline. Essentially, you want to look at your face and decide where the forehead ends and mark a hairline. And remember that just like your skin is not shrink wrapped to your bones, your hair is not shrink wrapped to your skull. There's volume. So again, we're going to leave just a little bit of a berth, which is a fancy way of saying give yourself a nice little gap to work within. And I'm going to turn the symmetry layer back on in a moment so that we can do the hair. I find that this is just like a very simple hairdo that's beginner friendly. And like I was saying before, you can change the colors of your sketch as many times as you want so that you can keep track visually of what's going on. So we'll do a very basic set of bangs here. I'm using very basic shapes for hair. Tapered triangle works best when in doubt. We'll give her some little sideburns here. I went back and forth about whether or not to include the ears, but I like to make these little side triangles. And for the top of the head, because we're using the symmetry tool, we're basically just going to mark off the top of the bang. And we're keeping the lines very soft because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. If you're looking for a very easy way to just add a little bit of intrigue to hair, you can make these little gaps. I think that this is a very sort of Y2K thing, these weird like hair gaps, but I like it. It's easy for the purpose of sketching to understand where you want to put your hair. If you're feeling especially saucy, I like to use a round painting brush. And in this case, I've turned my symmetry layer off so that I can kind of go in and refine the bangs. And I like doing the little crisscross bang shape in the front. So with your symmetry layer off, you can basically just refine details. So are your eyebrows hidden? Can we see them? Can we only see parts of them? You can do at this point. Eyelashes, you can decide where to put the ears. I went a little back and forth, but they're kind of just peeking out there. For eyelashes, I always do fluffy lashes. You can turn your symmetry tool back on here, but I'm basically just experimenting with shapes. And because we're doing half triangles everywhere, I'm going to keep the theme of the little triangles, and we're going to match the texture of the eyelashes to the texture of the hair. So again, we're not reinventing the wheel. You can move the pupils around, you can move the bottom lashes around. In this case, I'm just going to kind of vaguely mark them. Again, you can use your lasso tool, so you just copy, paste, and flip, and then you have two perfect little eyes that are exactly the same. And make as many layers as you feel you need, because if you're going to be deleting things beneath, then you don't want to accidentally start erasing part of your sketch that you need. You can mark other rudimentary things, for example, achial cell, or a lip, or shading if you have a pretty good idea of where you want the light to go. It's an underpainting, so it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be nice, it just has to give you the general impression of what we're gonna do when we ink it. And so really, like, your comfort is the most important thing. Edit with the symmetry tool on and off to decide if you want to do a different expression, or maybe you want an asymmetrical face. Like, asymmetry does exist in nature. It's entirely possible to draw somebody with asymmetrical features. And so now that we've got all of our rudimentary base, I'm just going to cut off the ends to make sure that I don't have like a lopsided drawing when I'm inking and eventually coloring, and then you can decide to do any kind of smaller detailing that you feel you need as of this point. So we'll do a really quick comparison with the base head. As you can see, everything's looking real symmetrical. It's looking correct. You can essentially put your sketch over any reference images that you may have to make sure that everything is in the right place. And if you want to use the bases, you absolutely can. Here's a very basic way. You literally just put it as your sketch layer, and then we'll sketch a little Kana Hokiri on top. I love her. She's one of the characters in my manga. She's been so fun to make, and she's my most plus size character, so I absolutely love drawing her. But again, little triangles. This extremely simplified method is essentially the method that I use specifically for the manga, because I don't want to do super complex reproductions every time I have to draw my characters. But again, you can use the bases. They're available on Patreon for free, and you can make any kind of changes. So here, just for fun and to show you the versatility of the base, I've changed the eye shape a little bit. I've given her kind of a more aloof expression. And so we're going to move the eyelids, and I like to use the eyelids as kind of an eyebrow to like accentuate the emotion, because you can't always quite see the eyebrows. And so you can play around with the bases and basically create whatever character you want. I'll show you how I apply this very rudimentary and basic technique in my everyday. So we'll do a little redraw of Miss Cow. I'm doing again a rudimentary circle, a rudimentary line to help guide me in the 3/4 face position, and honestly I do the cheeks and jaw from muscle memory. And so I'm just kind of finding where my eyes go based on my rudimentary circle. I don't really need to do much marking of where the nose and mouth go anymore because I kind of intrinsically know, because I've been drawing in the same rounded style for a while now. I like to mark the back of the skull so that I can understand where to put the hair and make sure that the skull doesn't seem kind of weird and deformed and the hair is shrink wrapped to somewhere that it shouldn't be. This took me under 3 minutes. We're doing like super basic shapes just to kind of show you that you don't need to have a super complex underpainting. For content that I make that I'm not posting to social media, I don't really clean up my sketches because there's no need. I try to clean up my underpaintings or my sketches when I know that they're going to be posted so that it's not literally just scribbles. But 9 times out of 10, I'd just be scribbling. And so again, there's the rudimentary shape. It's just a vague circle with like a line through it. And then on Miss Cow you can see where I had already erased the little markers of where the features go. And you can use the lasso tool at any time to move things around as well. So there you have it, a tutorial for absolute beginners, children, or anybody who wants to use the most out of the accessibility features on Procreate. If you want to use the free bases, please do head over to the Patreon. The free tier has a lot on it, and I'm planning to release more bases and more interesting poses. If you do want to join the paid tiers, there's really fun exclusive perks. You get to see the videos ahead of them going up for the general public. There is, of course, NSFW artwork, and you get to directly vote on what I make. So I am very much beholden to you. Thank you to the patrons that make these videos possible. Adi, Gwen, Kat, Leo, Delta Animations, Not a Necrowizard, Akuzon.com, BigMonke, Auri, Noop, Andrea, Blake, and RocktricksP. Thank you so much. I love you all. Please do check me out on everything if you learned something, and even if you didn't learn anything today, squingle that bwingle and boingle that squingle, and like, comment, and survive. Bye.